Right, just checking this thing works. Checking 1, 2, 3. Yep, everything's working. Cool. Um, so yeah, it's another week, so it's another sort of subclass review for me until I try and figure out what I'm actually going to play. Probably will never happen. I'll probably keep stalling, knowing me. But anyway, today we're doing Warlock. I think this class will have more of an impact in general because like the subclasses will because it's more of a half caster. It's a bit of a weird half caster actually because unlike some of the other half casters we've seen, such as like Paladin and Ranger, this one doesn't really have the melee backing that the other two have. You know, like they have either really good ranged capacity or really good melee capacity, and then the spells are just sort of like they're sort of just useful utility tools to sort of either boost your ability to do damage or to make sure that you're like less likely to get hit so that you can survive or something. Whereas this one, I'm not sure what they were going for. My best guess is that they effectively made a class that needs to have the cantrip Eldritch Blast. I say needs as if it's you can't do it without. You can do it without. So I guess needs is the wrong word. It's more that there is a lot of things in the class that are specialized around Eldritch Blast. And so if you don't use Eldritch Blast, you're kind of in a bad situation. So it's kind of a ranged sort of spellcaster class, but without any of the spell slots that you'd get from anyone else. But it does get access to a lot of interesting. I say like there are abilities that are good, but they're mostly like flavor. There's a lot of flavor to them as well, with the invocations and stuff. Anyway, first one is Archfey. So, as you can probably expect, and what you'll see through all of these is it will be effectively what your patron is, and I think that to me, I've brought this up in the class review, but that's the biggest selling point on the Warlock is the fact that you can you can make effectively two characters because what you're doing is you're making your base character and its personality and all of its story, and the big part of that story will be how you met or interacted or got this deal with the patron, and the patron is almost like a second character where you've got to really put in a decent amount of detail with the patron to sort of make your character whole, in my opinion. Anyway, Archfey. Get access to a bunch of spells, as you'll see with all of them. They're pretty decent. Fairy Fire's got some niche uses. You can get a lot of people in the AoE. You probably get one or two of them. Now, having access to advantage is not bad. I've seen some uses of it being used for getting rid of invisibility, but I think they're few and far between. Sleep's pretty decent early on. Calm emotions, it's not bad. Again, it's a bit more of a niche use. Phantasmal Force is okay. I very rarely, if ever, use this ability. Sorry, this spell. Um, so I don't really have much of an impression on it. Blink's not bad. Being able to make sure that you can get away from any sort of attack. It's always useful. Plant growth, I don't see much use out of. Dominate Beast isn't bad. Greater invisibility is really useful because it allows you to keep this on while doing attacks and stuff, which is very, very good. Dominate Person will occasionally come up, and Seeming I just don't really understand, I'll be completely honest. It's an illusion spell that I just don't really understand. It probably has some decent out of combat use in sort of like you know, sneaking situations, as a lot of illusions do, but that's as far as I can take it. The other ability is Fey Presence. Starting at first level, your patron bestows upon you the ability to project the beguiling and fearsome presence of the Fey. As an action, you can cause each creature in a 10-foot cube originating from you to make a wisdom saving throw against your Warlock spell save DC. That creature, the creature that fails that saving throw will charmed or frightened, your choice, until the end of your next turn. Once you use this feature, you can't use it until you finish a short or long rest. So, this ability, you're getting it at first level, and for first level, it's pretty impressive. It's an AoE centered on yourself, charm or frightened, which is pretty decent because if you're charming or frightening people, if you're in melee, I think you get more use out of this. If you've gone back to the blade to start using weapons in melee, well, effectively turning it into what the ranger and paladin are, in the sense of you having melee and then using this as utility, then I can see the real use, because you'll be surrounded a lot of the times. In sort of like a ranged combatant way, it's pretty okay, because if they get close to you, you immediately want to get out of there. And being able to get out of there while potentially frightening or charming not just one person in there, but multiple people, it's pretty good, because it's giving you a bunch of, like, you're putting yourself in your friends in an advantageous position. That's not too bad. I think in general, this ability done nowadays, now I know it's first level and a lot of abilities I've been doing before have been third, but I think in this day and age it would say you can do this equal to your proficiency bonus. As I've said before, that is just a symptom of, you know, stuff getting stronger and stronger, but in general, I would prefer if it had the ability that said, like, if nothing succeeds, you get the feature again. It doesn't expend the feature. Just because I don't know, I don't like stuff that just, you do it, there's no impact. I understand there are spells and abilities that do that. I personally just don't like them. And then the next ability comes a bit later, 6th level. Starting at 6th level, you can vanish in a puff of mist in response to harm. By the way, this is called Misty Escape. When you take damage, you can use your reaction to turn invisible and teleport up to 60 feet to an unoccupied space you can see. You remain invisible until the start of your next turn, until you attack or cast a spell. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. Now, notably, as you saw with the other one, is all of these abilities will come back on a short rest, and that is notable because a lot of the other abilities like this will either say long rest, or they'll say, you know, get back by spending a resource that you have. Now, I'm not the best to review those kinds of things because I'm not in a situation where I do a lot of short rests in my campaigns, but I can see a point of, like, you use these abilities in a dungeon and you make your way down to floor 2 and you guys decide, well, we're going to camp here for a short amount of time. What is it, like 4 hours for a short rest? And then you gain all these abilities back. I can see that being useful. And this ability, the ability to reaction, just go, okay, well, you got one hit on me, but that's it. No one's getting a hit on me again. Now, admittedly, later on, things will get alternate senses. A lot of stuff, even early on at a 6th level, will have an alternate sense of some variety. But the teleport 60 feet sort of, not solves, but sort of means that this never becomes a useless ability. Because, I mean, 60 feet it's a long like journey. You're probably not having that person that was in combat with you fighting you again, using the rest of their attacks. and it's very unlikely that anyone else is going to get into combat with you. Assuming you've gone 60 feet away, it's very unlikely that any of them will get an attack on you, because a lot of stuff will not have 60 feet movement base. They might be able to dash to get to you, but then they've used some resource most of the time in action, which means they can't attack you. And that's assuming that they have a blind sense or blind sight of 60 feet. You know, they might not even be able to see you, which is notable. What is also notable is that, if I remember correctly on the rules of invisibility, and I could be completely wrong, so I'm sorry if I am, but you would then have to hide to actually make it so they completely couldn't see you. Because I think you can make perception checks or something to see somebody if they're invisible, if they haven't done the hide action or something. I could be completely wrong there, but that might be a debuff to it. Overall, I don't mind this ability, and I didn't mind the last ability. I think, as I've said for a couple that have just been like the original subclasses from the player's handbook, it's gonna have a. I think it will be noticeable that you are weaker than somebody if there was somebody else there with a similar. Like, if there was somebody there who was playing a Warlock that was one of the newer ones and you were playing this, it would be notable that your abilities are weaker than his. But if you don't care about that, or if you're in a group where you're sort of taking up a niche that no one else is doing, then you're fine with this, and you'd have a good time based on these two abilities. I'll see how it goes on for the rest of it. Beguiling defenses. Beginning at 10th level, your patron teaches you how to turn mind-affecting magic on your enemies against them. You're immune to being charmed, and whenever another creature attempts to charm you, you can use your reaction to attempt to turn the charm back at that creature. The creature must succeed on a wisdom saving throw. Against your Warlock spell save DC, you'll be charmed by you for 1 minute or until the creature takes any damage. Okay. I like that. I think what is pretty noticeable that I think is hard for any player and any DM is the sort of, and this may feel like it's a bit off topic, but trust me, it isn't. It's sort of like unintentional metagaming that I think this brings up for me, which is, I think to a certain extent okay, but and to others it isn't. So if I'm say the DM of somebody who has this ability, and they've talked about this ability with me, then I know that well, I don't know, but I feel like unintentionally I won't target them with charm effects. Well, because I'll go, well, I won't do it on them because it won't do anything. But what actually needs to happen is me thinking of it from the perspective of the characters we're dealing with, who would probably try and charm whoever's the most important to get on their side briefly, right? And if that happens to be me, then it should try and charm me. But I feel like that can be a problem in general. I don't think I can think of a specific incident with me that this has happened, but I feel like I've seen situations where like players, and it's a similar thing where players have assumed information about a monster because it's sort of common knowledge for normal people. It's like if I see a troll, I'm gonna go, oh, okay, that thing's gonna have regeneration, and its weakness is gonna be fire. And if I specifically choose fire spells, in a way, I'm metagaming, right? And I think a similar thing could happen with this ability. I do like this ability though. The idea that you're so into like the Fey way, which is very illusions, very charming, that kind of stuff. It's ethereal beauty kind of thing that you see a lot with elves that do have Fey ancestry. Um, that you are immune to being charmed, and in fact you can charm the person back. Um, I quite like it as an ability. I just would worry about that unintentional bias I talked about. 14th level ability, Dark Delirium. I think that's how you say it. Starting at 14th level, you can plunge a creature into an illusionary realm. As an action, choose a creature that you can see within 60 feet of you. It must make a wisdom saving throw against your Warlock spell save DC. On a failed save, it is charmed or frightened by you for 1 minute or until your concentration is broken, as if you were concentrating on a spell. The effect ends early if the creature takes any damage. Until the illusion ends, the creature thinks it is lost in a misty realm, the appearance of which you choose. The creature can see and hear only itself, you, and the illusion. You must finish a short or long rest before you can use this feature again. So you choose a creature, they make a wisdom save. On a failed save, they are charmed or frightened, but in addition to it being charmed and frightened, they are stuck in an illusion of being lost in a misty realm. So they can't even see anything else other than you. This is a really cool ability, and I think the feel for it and the narrative behind it really fits like a proper capstone ability. And it doesn't seem... The problem with it is it doesn't seem that strong, because it's sort of... The level you get at first level is an AoE Charm and Frighten, and this is a single target Charm and Frighten that has a little bit of extra text that means it can't see anyone but you. And to me that feels like a downgrade. That little extra text makes it really cool because you can sort of play it off as being much more powerful than yourself, which really very much fits with the idea of just like deceiving, illusion, trickery, you know, that kind of stuff. But I look at it and go, if I take away that line that talks about the Misty Realm, it's a single target charm or frighten, which you can get, we have seen at first level. We can get better than that at first level. In addition of that text, how much does that add? Does that add 13 levels of progression to this ability? And I don't think it does. So I think overall this ability, although narratively cool, if you take a step back and look at it what it actually is, it actually comes across as being pretty bad in my opinion. Overall, when it comes to Archfey, I think I like it because I think it's pretty good because it gets access to a decent amount of spells that are cool. The AoE Frighten and Charm is not bad. It does what you want to do at that point, and it very much goes into the idea you're going with the Fey. The Misty Escape is a very useful tool that you get back on a short rest. So if you're in campaigns where, you know, you're going on long journeys and you're doing a lot of stuff in quick succession, and so the best you can do is a short rest. A lot of the time, having a Misty Escape constantly come back and just being that sort of get out of jail free card whenever you're dealing with something getting too close to you. It's pretty decent, and the beguiling defenses is good if you can sort of if you don't have the problem of unintentional bias. I think the only thing that lets it down is the capstone feature, but the reason why I'm still saying it's good, even though I've said that about the capstone feature, is because for a lot of people, they never get there. They get to 12. I think this one is the most likely because I think it's one of the lower capstone feature leveled one of the lower capstone features from a subclass. The Warlock ones, starting at 14th, when I think a lot of them are a bit later, either being 16th or 18th, or in some cases with the Paladin 20th. It might be 18th actually. Anyway, later than 14th. I just don't. I think when it comes to abilities, I can give a pass for the capstone in this situation because I feel like the other abilities are good, and you're not going to see the capstone as much. Next is Celestial. So just like the Archfey, you get access to an expanded spell list. This one, as you can probably expect from the name, is very much like cleric spells effectively. You got Cure Wounds, you got Guiding Bolt, Flaming Sphere, Lesser Restoration. All of these are spells you get as a cleric. With like Guiding Bolt and Cure Wounds is a very powerful single target attack and a very useful healing spell. Flaming Sphere is not that great. It's a worse spiritual weapon in most circumstances. Lesser Restoration is going to come up occasionally. It's not bad. Daylight is probably borderline useless in my opinion, especially with how much dark vision is around. But no, yeah, it's borderline useless. Revivify will come up. It will save characters many times. Guardian of Faith is guaranteed damage. It sits there and it goes, I stay here until I do 60 damage or more in some cases. Wall of Fire. It's a good crowd control tool. You just put that down, you go, okay, if you want to get me from this side, if you want to stop this from being like an unbreakable wall that nobody can get through, you're going to have to take some damage. And it's not a small amount of damage as well. Also, even though it says Wall of Fire, you can do it in like a ring, for example. Like you can change its sort of shape a bit. Flame Strike is okay. It's sort of just a weaker fireball in a lot of senses. But it's not bad. It's still damage and it's still AoE, so you're still going to get some use out of it. And Greater Restoration will come up a fair amount. In addition, you get Sacred Flame of Light. It's very cool. It makes a lot of sense. I think Sacred Flame is a cleric exclusive, so it makes sense to give it to the Warlock that's specifically about Celestials. Light you can't normally get as a Warlock either, so getting access to that, which is synonymous with being a Celestial a lot of the time. If you think of a Celestial, you're thinking of something bathed in light a lot of the time. Makes sense you get that. You also get Healing Light. At first level, you gain the ability to channel celestial energy to heal wounds. You have a pool of d6s that you spend to fuel this healing. The number of die in the pool equals 1 plus your Warlock level. As a bonus action, you can heal one creature you can see within 60 feet of you, spending die from the pool. The maximum number of die you can spend at once equals your Charisma modifier, which will probably start out as probably a +2. More the die you spend, add them together, restore a number of hit points equal to the total. Your pool regains when you finish a long rest. Now this is really cool because it's a way of giving the Celestial Warlock access to a lot of healing without just going, here's the cleric spell list, right? Because as far as I can see here, just making sure in case I'm an idiot and it says something here, I don't see anything that says that you get a cleric spell list. I could sound like an idiot as soon as if someone points it out, but as far as I can see, you don't. So this goes, instead of giving you the cleric spell list, which the Divine Soul Sorcerer got, this one goes, okay, instead, we're just going to give you this pool of just basic healing. That constantly goes up with your level, and you can just use it to bonus action heal people. And it being a bonus action is a huge bonus on this, for lack of a better word, because action healing stuff is not nearly as good as bonus action healing. And that sounds obvious, but it is important to bring up because you'll get so much use out of Healing Word, which is the bonus action healing, and this is arguably a better healing word. Okay, and there's a strong argument for that. But it's a class feature. which again makes it even better because they can't counterspell it. But although I don't know what horrendous blimmin' DM would do that. I'm saying horrendous. I mean more like it would be. You'd be like fucking hell. Like it might be thematic for the character, and I guess it would be fine if that was true. But yeah, I really like the Healing Light ability. The spells it gets access to is really good. And the bonus cantrip is always good. It literally is that, a bonus. Radiant Soul. Starting at 6th level, your link to the Celestials allows you. Your link to the Celestial allows you to serve as a conduit for radiant energy. You have resistance to radiant damage. And when you cast a spell that deals radiant or fire damage, you can add your charisma modifier to one radiant or fire damage roll of that spell against one of the targets. This is pretty good because it effectively goes all those damaging spells you're getting from your spell list, they just got a buff. So you have more of an incentive to use them again. I like that, and I like the ability in general. I mean, it's a 6th level ability, so you're not really expecting this huge impact from it. So this ability, I think, does a decent amount. You'll notice it. I mean, the biggest thing with Eldritch Blast that makes everybody really like it is, sure, it has a load of customizations. You can make it push, you can make it pull, you can make it have a bunch of range. But I think what's really important with it is that I think one of its biggest impacts is the fact that you can add your charisma modifier to it if you take an Eldritch Invocation. And this just goes, okay, now you could technically go, I don't want to use Eldritch Blast, I want to use Sacred Flame. And I don't think there's too much of a argument to not do that. Like, you're not, at this point, you're not actively weakening yourself by like even that much. You're worsening the damage type, you're probably worsening its range, but you are changing it to a saving throw, which isn't insignificant because saving throws, you can have someone with a really high AC but a pretty bad saving throw for what you're doing. And now it has the extra charisma modifier added on. So that's pretty decent. I like that ability. Also, obviously, any AoE, just you add some more damage to it, it's not bad. 10th level, Celestial Resilience. Now this made me feel like this one should have given you resistance to radiant damage, but whatever. Starting at 10th level, you gain temporary hit points whenever you finish a long or short rest. These temporary hit points equal your Warlock level, plus your Charisma modifier. In addition, choose up to 5 creatures you can see. At the end of the rest, these creatures each gain temporary hit points equal to half your level plus your charisma modifier. That's pretty cool. It's kind of it does a similar thing to Inspiring Leader, the feat that you can take. Except this one, it doesn't cost you a feat for one, and also I think I'd have to check, but I think it scales the same, and I quite like this because it's like you're using your healing for it, and it maybe Inspiring Leader doesn't work on a short rest. But yeah, I quite like this ability. It's nice, just a little bit of extra health. It'll always come up. Everyone will always be thankful about it, and it just further that goal of you being this healer that's a bit unconventional, because a lot of the time you're not healing with your spells, you're healing with your abilities. And I like that. Searing Vengeance. Starting at 14th level, the radiant energy you channel allows you to resist death. When you have to make a let me try and do that again. When you have to make a death saving throw at the start of your turn, you can instead spring back to your feet with a burst of radiant energy. You regain hit points equal to half your hit point maximum, so you gain half your health. And then you stand up if you so choose. Each creature of your choice that is within 30 feet of you takes radiant damage equal to 2d8 plus your charisma modifier and is blinded until the end of the current turn. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. I really like this ability. I think this has a lot more impact than the previous one we saw. Because this one just goes, oh, you thought I was down? Well, I'm up again. And now, boom, I've just done a huge impact on the fight by doing a decent amount of damage to everybody around me. 30 feet's not a small radius. That could get feasibly, even if they're like decently spread out, you could get 4 or 5 people in that. In addition to that, because 2d8 plus charisma modifier AoE when you get back up wouldn't be that impactful. It wouldn't be bad. I wouldn't be coming into this and going, this is horrendous, but I wouldn't be thrilled. This also just goes, oh, also it blinds everyone. And it's not even like a saving throw that they have to fail at. It's just they're blinded. Which is really, really cool. Because assuming they don't have an alternate sight, which I have brought up a lot of the time that a lot of things will have alternate sights at this point, but there is a chance that you're dealing with a load of, minions that the boss happens to summon as like part of one of his actions, and maybe those guys might not be immune to being blinded. Either way, the fact that you're getting back up and you're getting half your health back, and you're doing your AoE, and in addition to that, you get your turn. It's not bad. I quite like that ability. Overall, Celestial I have a much higher impression of. Not only does it sort of switch how you play the class, which is a kind of, in my opinion, not done very well in Archfey. In this one, it goes, okay, you are healing now. You have access to a decent healing. And the healing comes from features and not spells a lot of the time. You never get healing word, but you get better healing word in your healing light. And you get a lot of interesting utility spells that are kind of not needed when you go cleric. Not like always the ones that you're thinking about, but are definitely important ones that you're always happy to have someone that can do it. And then later on, you gain access to a bunch more damage when it comes to Radiant and Fire, which means you can switch off Eldritch Blast without feeling like you're really nerfing yourself. You get Resilience that just gets you an Inspiring Leader effect that allows you to just give them a bit more temp health. And then the Capstone feature, which will not only be visually really cool or narratively really cool, but it will have an effect. It means, again, you don't have to focus on healing yourself as much, which I believe I've brought up with some other healers before I really like. Next is the Fathomless. Now this is one of the newer ones. This is the Tasha one. I've looked at this one before. I really like it because we'll see. We'll get to the spells and I'll talk about get to the abilities and I'll tell you why I like it. Its spell list isn't great. You get access to create or destroy water, which I feel like very rarely gets used. Thunderwave isn't horrendous, but because you get access to that pushback, which can be useful, but in general there are, in my opinion, probably better spells that will do AoE. Gust of Wind, again, I feel like with Fathomless, because of the distinct lack of there being a water damage in D&D, you find that there's significantly less water spells, and so they just have to take stuff from whenever they're doing water themed stuff. They kind of just have to take for as many spells as they can get. That's why a lot of them aren't water based; they're storm based because they want to get access to lightning and rain. Which is, I guess, it's water, but it's more of a utility thing. And you get access to rain, and you get lightning and wind and stuff, which can access more stuff. Gust of Wind is just a push spell again. It's not bad. It might come up occasionally. Silence is useful, but I feel like it's a bit niche because it's not like not what you expect if you played RPGs. It's not like I target somebody and I make it so they can't cast any spells. It's I put an AoE down that no one can cast spells in this, which can just fuck over your other friends, honestly. Create and destroy water and control water have a similar problem. I think maybe Control Water gets a bit more use out of combat, but I feel like it's not a great spell. Summon Elemental is not bad even if you're only stuck on water, because just having something there that can take the hits instead of you is never bad. Bigby's Hand I've seen being used in Critical Role for good effect, but because I didn't watch Critical Role all the way through, especially specifically season 1, I haven't watched all the way through. I haven't done any of them, but this one's relevant for season 1. I don't know specifically how it was being used, or whether he had any sort of artifact or change to the spell to make it even better. And Cone of Cold isn't bad. It's an AoE. Does 8d8. That's not bad. It's got a pretty high. It's a pretty big cone. I like the narrative of they become frozen statues when they die. Right, onto the Tentacles of the Deep. First level ability. You can magically summon a spectral tentacle that strikes at your foes. As a bonus action, you create a 10-foot long tentacle at a point you can see within 60 feet of you. The tentacle lasts for 1 minute until you use this feature to create another tentacle. When you create the tentacle, you can make a melee spell attack against one creature within 10 feet of it. On a hit, the target takes 1d8 cold damage, and its speed is reduced by 10 feet until the start of your next turn. When you reach 10th level in this class, the damage is increased to 2d8. As a bonus action, on your turn, you can move the tentacle up to 30 feet and repeat the attack. You can summon the tentacle a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain them when you finish a long rest. So this is why I really like the Fathomless Warlock, because it effectively gives you a bunch more spiritual weapons, and I really like spiritual weapon. And so this gives me a spiritual weapon that does cold damage, which is the worst damage type because I'm pretty sure the spiritual weapon does force, but it slows them down, keeps them away from you, and it scales without me having to like spend a higher spell level for it. So I really like this ability, but I am biased in that aspect. But I do think it's a decent ability. The narrative of the look of the idea of like tentacles growing from the ground and like slamming into the enemies, I think is really cool. Do I think this ability is... Sorry about that, I was yawning. Do I think this ability is game changing in the sense of like how I believed the Celestial one was? No. But I think it's a really cool ability that adds a little bit more strategy to how you play. Also, you get a swimming speed of 40 feet and you can breathe underwater. I like that seems like it's a bit just like it's just been tacked on. And the reason why I like that it just feels like it's tacked on is because I wouldn't want that to be an ability that took up a lot of space. In the sense that I'm getting one very powerful ability, or as they occasionally like to do, 2 decently powerful abilities at first level. I don't want one of them to be Gift of the Sea, because I feel like it's taking up a space that it really doesn't have an impact. And it really doesn't have an impact on the actual thing. I think it should always just be that little extra add-on. It's like, oh, you also get a swimming speed, because swimming speed just doesn't come up much. If it said flying speed, I'd be like, what the heck is it doing here? Getting a flying speed at first level is insane. Sorcerers have to wait till like 14th. But overall, I really like let me speak again. Sorry, I'm stuttering so much. I really like Tentacles of the Deep. And I think the spell list is okay. I don't think it's great. And Gift of the Sea is like a nice little extra. Like Oceanic Soul, 6th level. You are now even more at home in the depths. You gain resistance to cold damage. It'll come up occasionally. Cold damage is not too uncommon. In addition, when you are fully submerged, any creature that is also fully submerged can understand your speech and you can understand theirs. Now I think that's a really cool narrative tool. The fact that if you're in a situation, which is very rare, where you'll be underwater. Because underwater is pretty hard to like visualize, especially if you're playing online. The idea that you as a person can talk with the enemy or talk with your friends, is very cool. I think it's a very, very cool ability. I've said this before about abilities that have been about like specifically allowing you to talk in a special way. That my group very much talks a lot out of character about strategies and stuff, so I don't know how much this gets used in our kinds of games. But I think it's a really cool narrative tool that I would love to get used if I chose this subclass by the DM. Like if I chose Fathomless, I'm hoping that my DM puts us in the occasional situation where my swimming speed and breathing underwater and my talking can be used. But I believe that with all abilities, right? If I'm going into a game and I have a subclass and it has cool abilities, I want there to be situations where I can use said abilities. And I would hope that DM would facilitate that in some capacity. Obviously, I don't want it to just be really obvious, like, oh no, the only way to get that key to open up the special temple that has the divine relic you need to continue the frickin' story is to go through this temple, but it's completely submerged underwater. What are you gonna do? I'd want it to be a bit more like, hey, I'm gonna put this in. If he does it, cool, he gets to use his ability, but if he doesn't, he doesn't, and it's completely ignored. Like occasionally, you know? Guardian Coil. Your tentacle of the deeps can defend you and others, imposing itself between them and harm. When you or a creature you can see takes damage within 10 feet of the tentacle, you can use your reaction to choose one of those creatures and reduce the damage to that creature by 1d8. When you reach 10th level, the damage is reduced by 2d8. I like this. A lot of the time you would have to spend a feat or have it as like a subclass feature, maybe at maybe like 3rd level, maybe at 6th level, to get a similar effect, right? It's the interception like kind of feat where you put yourself in front of them, that kind of stuff. I like in general, I like these abilities, and it makes sense more that like as a warlock, 50% of warlocks will not be going into melee. And so having this ability where it's like, okay, you can use it on allies so that you can make sure that they're mitigating damage in some capacity so that they can stay in the battle longer is always good. The idea that if you do go melee, you go pack to the blade, you go into fight with them. This still gets some use because then you can reduce the damage going to you. So I really like that. It's not a lot, but I don't think you want it to be a lot. Because if it was a lot, I think it would be a bit overpowered. And it does scale a bit, which isn't bad. 10th level. You learn the spell Evards? Avards? Or Vards? I don't know, maybe the E's silent? Ivards. I'm going to go with Ivards. Black Tentacles. Counts as a Warlock spell for you. It doesn't count against the number of spells you know. You can also cast it once without a spell slot, and you regain the ability to do so when you finish a long rest. Whenever you cast a spell, your patron's magic bolsters you, granting you a number of temporary hit points equal to your warlock level. Moreover, damage can't break your concentration on the spell. So this spell is super powered. And it's a AoE, 20-foot square. They must make a dexterity saving throw if they enter it for the first time or start their turn in it. And if they fail, they take 3d6 bludgeoning and are restrained. If they succeed, I assume if they succeed, they take no damage. It's not a bad spell. It makes difficult terrain, it restrains them. It's like Entangle, but it does damage every turn. and it's 4th level, but that's not a bad spell. And then you go, okay, well every time I cast this, and not necessarily with the one that you get free, just every time you cast this, I just get a bunch of temporary hit points that allows me to stay in combat or to, not have to heal, or it means I can take more range attack before I go down as the back line. I really like. I'm a big fan. I very much like this ability because I'm a big fan of any ability that takes a spell and goes, well, the spell that exists, you can do it differently. Like, you can do it as a bonus action, or your range is increased, or your damage is different. I really like those abilities because it makes you feel more like, okay, I am unique. I am my own person. I am, even if they cast the same spell as me, because they happen to have that in their spell list. I'm different. My character does it in a different way. I like that ability. At 14th level, you can magically open a temporary conduit to watery destinations. As an action, you can teleport yourself or up to 5 other willing creatures that you can see within 30 feet of you. Amid a whirl of tentacles, you all vanish and then reappear up to 1 mile away in a body of water you've seen or within 30 feet of it. Each of you appearing in an unoccupied space within 30 feet of the others. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. Now, I thought I knew this ability, and I was already pretty low on it. I'm going to put it out there. I'm pretty low on these abilities. Because I think it's got so many restrictions to it, and I don't know how often you're going to need that such a long teleport that's specifically to watery destinations. But that was before I even saw that it had the 1 mile away clause. I thought it could go infinite distances, and even then I wasn't high on this. I'm still not very high on this. I think this is not a very good ability, in my opinion. I like the concept behind it, that you like get grabbed by tentacles and then you appear up in a different body of water. But I think, and I like that it's utility. I think it's fallen short in my opinion. If I was going to put an ability there instead, either I'd go for a damaging ability and have it where it's like, well, those tentacles that you keep summoning, you can summon like an avatar of whatever your patron is, like a smaller version of it that has, those tentacles have been this avatar's tentacles, and you get to summon a creature that attacks for you, like a spectral creature. But this one, it's once per long rest. If I was going to give it a utility, then I would, first off, if I was going to give them something similar to this one, I think I'd have it where, first off, you get rid of the distance thing, right? And then second off, you go like, you make it, you take off the distance one of this, and then you give it 2 abilities. And then the second ability is something along the lines of, and believe I'm not a game designer, so take everything I do with a pinch of salt, and I'm making it up on my spot. But it's like, you can cast Control Water at will, or something along the lines of something like, you can cover yourself in the spectral tentacles that are produced from the ground. You can grow them now out of your body or something, and you get like a climb speed, and you always, you get an automatic without using your reaction lowering of damage, and an automatic every melee or spell attack you do gets an extra 2d8 because your tentacles come out and whap them or something. Something like that. I think overall that one's a bit disappointing. So yeah, in terms of Fathomless, I think the starting abilities, all of them except for the capstone, are really cool abilities, and I like them. Um, it does suffer a bit from having almost no utility, but I think you get a bit of that from spells, and you get a bit of that from your inevitable skills, but I know that's not a good enough excuse. I think the spell thing is probably a bit valid because a lot of Eldritch Invocations and stuff give you at will spells that allow you to manipulate, like, and stuff like that. So I think it's not as bad. I do think the capstone ability is a bit disappointing, but I think the abilities in general are, in my opinion, funner. Now, again, as I said, this isn't an expert talking about it. It's at the end of the day just my opinion. So I think its first to 10th level abilities are better than the Celestials, in my opinion. And even though the Celestial has a better capstone ability, I think I prefer Fathomless. The Fiend, the one people always think of, I think. Get access to a spell list. Generally, it's pretty okay. Burning Hands isn't bad. Command is, it can get a lot of use both in and out of combat. Blindness, Deafness, it will come up. I mean, it's a second level spell, so the alternate sights won't be as prevalent, if at all, there. Scorching Ray is a pretty decent damaging spell. Fireball's Fireball, and everyone fucking loves Fireball. Fireball's great. Stinking Cloud, I'd worry that does poison damage. What does it do? Oh, it's a debuff. Oh, but if you're immune to poison, it automatically saves. Okay, not a great spell. A lot of things will be immune to poison, as I've said many, many times before. Fire Shield's pretty interesting. Allows you to get a resistance to fire or cold, and it makes it so it erupts, dealing cold or fire damage whenever you get hit in a melee. Pretty decent if you're going. It's not concentration as well. Pretty decent if you're going the Pact of the Blade. Wall of Fire I've bought up before is okay. Flame Strike I bought up before. It's not bad, but it's not as good as it just feels like. Look at this. It does 46 Radiant and 46 Fire, right? Fireball does 86 Fire. Same damage. Split up a bit, but it's the same damage. The radius, this one, 20 foot radius. This one, 40 foot high, 10 foot radius. It's just a worse fireball in my opinion. And Hallow, let me have a look at this. You touch a point of a holy unholy power. Yeah, we can have a radius up to 60 feet. You hallow the land. Okay, there's loads of narrative to that. It's not bad. It's one of those spells where I don't think you'll get too much use out of it, but when you do, it'll be fun. And then there's its first level ability. Starting at first level, when you reduce a hostile creature to 0 hit points, you gain temporary hit points equal to your charisma modifier plus your warlock level. That's a really cool ability. I don't think it's nearly as impactful as some of the abilities you got as the Celestial, or definitely not as the Fathomless. In fact, it's not. It's really kind of like a small, almost nothing ability compared to the abilities you get by them. But it'll come up. I mean, you'll be killing stuff. Like, most of the time, you'll be going through a dungeon. There'll be like a bunch of goblins coming at you, especially at this level. A bunch of goblins come at you. You kill one of them, and it's like, cool. I'm ready now to fight another one. It's not bad, especially if you're going more melee based, where you'd love that temporary health. 6th level, Dark One's own luck. Starting at 6th level, you can call upon your patron to alter fate in your favour. When you make an ability check or saving throw, you can use this feature to add a d10 to your roll. You can do so after seeing the initial roll, but before you know if it's gonna do anything. Once you use this, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. Now I feel like this ability could have been first level, and they could have put a different 6th level ability here. I think this one plus the first level ability are impactful enough for at least modern day Warlock subclasses. I don't mind this ability. As I brought up with the Archfey, it's a bit weak compared to the higher up abilities. But I think it's a really cool ability. It's just like, oh no, I really need to succeed on this. Okay, I'm going to use this feature to just roll an extra d10. Hope to God I don't roll a 1, but I could roll a 10 and definitely succeed. I think it's really cool. The fact that I'd be more annoyed with it if it didn't say the word short rest there, which I understand in other campaigns. That would be really useful. But I feel like even if that wasn't there, it would say equal to your proficiency bonus, and then I would be also fine with it. Starting at 10th level, you get Fiendish Resilience. I feel like I'm seeing a theme here of putting things that they're based on resilience as a thing. I think there was one on Celestial as well. You can choose one damage type when you finish your short or long rest. You gain resistance to that damage type until you choose a different one with this feature. Damages from magical or silver weapons ignore this resistance. Now, I know what you probably think I'm going to say, which is, oh, magical weapons and silver weapons? Well, everyone's going to have those at that point, so this is useless. But it actually isn't, because a lot of magical creatures, when they attack you, don't actually have magical weapons. For example, I could be wrong here, but I don't think it says anywhere that a dragon's claws are magical weapons in any capacity. Just because it's a magical creature doesn't mean its attacks are magical weapon attacks. And so I think this gets more use than you'd expect. Obviously, if you're fighting almost exclusively elementals, you're probably going to have a bad time. But overall, I think this is not too bad. Other than the constant when it comes to these ones, which are that I feel like it's a bit weak, but that's always going to happen. 14th level, Hurl Through Time. Starting at 14th level, when you hit a creature with an attack, you can use this feature to instantly teleport the target through the lower planes. So when you hit a creature with an attack, you can in addition do this. They disappear and hurl through a nightmare landscape. In fact, I don't think you get to do this in addition to damage. I think it's just if you hit. At the end of your next turn, the target returns to a space it previously occupied, or the nearest unoccupied space. If the target is not a fiend, it takes 10d10 psychic damage as it reels from its horrific experience. Once you use this, you can't use this feature again until you finish a long rest. This is really cool. It's an impactful attack that does a lot of damage. Sure, it could roll a 10, but if them's the breaks, them's the breaks. It's incredibly unlikely. But it could roll, 100. You hit with this, you do a load of damage. You also give yourself a turn to set up. So that could be healing people up that aren't healed. It could be making sure everyone's in a favourable position. So moving the back line back, moving the front lines right next to him so that immediately when he appears, he can't just run to the back line. Stuff like that. Gives everyone a turn and it does damage. When does this say? It says at the end of your next turn. So it gives even you a turn just to set up. I like that. I very much like that. Fiends are... I've got a similar opinion of Fiend to Celestial. It's a solid class that has loads of decent abilities that I don't mind. That's a bit weak. Similar to the Archfey, except I think that its capstone feature is better than the Archfey, and its basic abilities are comparable to the Archfey. So I put it slightly higher than Archfey, but not to the level of Celestial or Fathomless. Genie. Now the Genie has some little extra things because there's technically many kinds of Genie. Because Genies are elementals in this. And so what it goes is choose your Genie. Fire, Earth, Water, Air. You get a bunch of spells. You get a basic spell list, which gives you one spell each level. Including a 9th level spell, which makes sense because it's Wish. Although, you would never... You get access to 9th level spells? Spells known, spell slots, spell level. You don't. But you do get access to the Wish spell. Which I find it quite interesting there. But you also get access to whichever element you choose. I'm not going to go through them. They're all pretty thematic. You got the Dow ones, the Earth ones being all Earth-related stuff. Spike growth, stone shape, wall of stone, meld into stone. Actually, not great abilities. A lot of them aren't that great. In general, Sanctuary's pretty decent though. Spike growth is pretty decent. I just think the other 3 aren't great. The Djinn gives you access to a bunch of lightning spells and invisibility. Greater invisibility is pretty good. The others are not that good. It's Seeming again. I don't think I like Seeming. The Fire one gives you access to a load of damaging spells because it's fire related. Although notably you get access to Flame Shield, which, as I said before, is pretty decent. And the water one gets access to a load of water spells, as you probably expect. This Sleet Storm, not bad. Not bad of a spell. Doesn't do a lot of damage, but it can make pretty difficult to get to somebody. Blur's not too bad either. In terms of just the generic Genie spells, Detect Evil and Good is not bad. It will come up, it'll be useful, especially if you don't have a Paladin in your group or a Cleric. Phantasmal Force, it's okay. I don't rate it too highly. Great Food and Water, it might come up if you're in a situation where rations and stuff will become a big part, although in my personal experience it's almost never a big part. You just have a lot of rations, or you have a ranger or a druid that can either cast Goodberry or narratively can go get you some kills and stuff. Phantasmal Killer, it's okay. Decent amount of damage. Creation's pretty cool, and then Wish is Wish. Second, its first level ability, the other thing it gets is Genie's Vessel. So it's a tiny vessel, it's effectively the lamp, but you can do some other ones. But as an action, you can magically vanish and enter the vessel, which remains in the space you left it. It's like an extra dimensional space. It's pretty comfortable in there. You can hear stuff that's happening around you, which is pretty interesting. You can remain in the vessel for a number of hours equal to twice your proficiency bonus. So at that point, it'll probably be a +2, so you're doing it for about 4 hours max, which isn't bad. It's just kind of like a safe space that you can go into. There is some applications out of combat in senses like you could use it as a hiding thing if nobody knows what you're like. They don't know anything about you and your vessel. Because like a ring with a compartment, just saw a ring on the floor. Like if there was a ring on the floor in like a back alley, no one would like go, oh, let me that's obviously a vessel of a genie, so let's go and check inside. There's some use for that out of combat. It also potentially can be oh no, I'm surrounded by enemies, what do I do? I use an action, I'm going into the safe space. It's hard to like, it means that then maybe they have to focus on somebody else if they're particularly dumb. I think it can be destroyed. So I don't know how useful that is. I think it might more be an out of combat thing. It is notably even at its weakest, It is notably just long enough for you to do a short rest in it, which is useful. So it is kind of like a safe space for you to do a long rest. Also, you get Genie's Fury. Once during each of your turns, when you hit with an attack roll, you can deal extra damage. You can deal extra damage to the target equal to your proficiency bonus. Pardon me. That's normally going to be a +2. The type is determined by your patron. Bludgeoning for Dao, Thunder for Jin. Ifrit, you get Fire and Cold for the Married. The vessel's AC is equal to your spell save DC. Hit points are equal to your level plus your proficiency bonus, and is immune to poison and psychic damage. Proficiency plus level, so it'd be 3 at this point. It's not a lot. I think generally, probably using the bottled respite for short rests, and then maybe even later long rests. Just to be generally safe. The extra damage isn't bad, but I think generally this first level ability is a bit disappointing. The spell list is not bad. You can definitely get the spell list that you specifically like would want for your build based on just what genie you choose. But yeah, they're not wowing me at the moment. Elemental Gift. You begin to take on the characteristics of your patron's kind. You now have resistance to the damage type associated with them, as I said before. What's interesting there is bludgeoning resistance, which I don't know how good that is, but it's interesting. In addition, you get a bonus action. You give yourself a flying speed of 30 feet for 10 minutes, during which you can hover. You can use this bonus action a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, but you get all of them back at a long rest. So you get flying speed early on. I made this joke before about how gotta wait for like 14th level for a sorcerer. Getting something like this for a flying speed of 30 feet, which is the same as probably your walking speed at that point, unless you got anything special about you. For 10 minutes, which is either one combat or like a decent, like, you can do that for a long period of time. I think that's really cool. I think it's a really cool ability. I think the damage type resistance stuff, it may occasionally come up, but it won't come up too much. The idea that you have bludgeoning resistance, though, is quite interesting. I'd be interested to see how often that comes up. Sanctuary Vessel. When you enter your Genie's Vessel via the Bottled Respite feature, you can now choose 5 willing creatures that you can see within 30 feet of you, and the chosen creatures are drawn into the vessel with you. Bonus action, you can eject any number of creatures from the vessel, and everyone is ejected if you leave or die, or if the vessel is destroyed. In addition, anyone, including you, who remains within the vessel for 10 minutes gains the benefits of finishing a short rest, and anyone can add your proficiency bonus to the number of hit points they regain if they spend any hit die as part of the short rest there. This is a very interesting ability. This is really, really cool. I wish you got that line of text of the 10-minute short rest earlier, because that's a proper effect that you're having on the group. You go to these people and you go, okay, we need a short rest. And this goes, okay, I send you to a safe space where you're unlikely to be attacked because it's just a little, like it's just a small, like ring. And you guys can have a short rest in 10 minutes. So we don't have to stop for a long period of time. Because for us, and this is one of the reasons we don't do short rests too often, we're always on the run from something, right? Well, not on the run, but like we always have a time limit and we need to get there. So like, oh no, a ritual's about to start. We have to get there as soon as possible. And it just makes no narrative sense for our characters to stop to have, oh, I know there's this ritual happening where they're sacrificing somebody, but let's just have a rest for 4 hours. I'm pretty tired, you know? That doesn't make any sense. And so having something like this, where it's just like, okay, it's 10 minutes. I can in my head reason with that a bit more. You know, like I can see us stopping for 10 minutes just to make sure we're at full strength. I like that. And that's where you're properly having an impact now. Now you're seeing the effects of you being a genie, except for that, you know, before it was just this little bits of extra damage and then this little quirk where you just go into your, you know, your ring or your lamp just to have a rest when everyone's waiting, where everyone's resting. This one actually shows that you're having a proper effect on the group. So I like it. Limited limited wish. You entreat your patron to grant you a small wish. As an action, you can speak your desires to the genie's vessel, requesting the effect of one spell that is 6th level or lower, and has a casting time of 1 action. The spell can be from any class's spell list, and you don't need to meet the requirements of that spell, including costly components. The spell simply takes effect as part of this action. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish 1d4 long rests. I like this. It's a very cool wish, because it's like, okay, you just get access to a high level spell. And at that point, it's not that high a level of a spell, but the sheer variety makes up for it to the point where it does have a bit of an impact. The idea that you could cast like a spell that's exclusive to clerics or something with this is really, really cool. So I quite like this as a concept. I can see situations where this comes in clutch, where it's like, okay, there's a load of people down. I use my action. I use this ability. I cast an AoE healing spell from the cleric spell list and get everybody up. Or it's like, oh god, this person's down. And our cleric, they're out of spell slots. What do? I use my action. Revive this man. And it casts Revivify on them. Or a better revive spell that you have access to at 6th level. Top of my head, I can't think of it. And I do understand the logic behind making it 1d4 instead of just making it 1 long rest. Because it is a powerful ability. I don't really... Overall, I like it, but I don't really understand this. You get access to Wish, but you're never able to cast it. I thought maybe one of the abilities would give you the ability to cast it, but is the logic here that you know the spell because it's associated with your patron, but you can never cast it because you'll never get the power level to do that? And being able to cast that would make you equivalent to your genie? I don't understand that. I'd appreciate if anybody like either in the comments of the YouTube video or on Twitch could tell me the logic behind that. I'd be really happy. Overall, Genie, I think its abilities are interesting, but I don't think they have that much impact. The going into the bottle thing is cool early on as like a one-time thing, but after a bit, it just comes across as antisocial in short rests. I think it's a very limited use other than the short rest thing. And then the other abilities are just either boosts to damage or boosts to resistances that are just passive effects that don't really make you feel like you're doing anything. I think the biggest impact is the one when you're allowed to put the other people in the bottle with you. And at that point, you're probably at the point where you can do long rests in it. And that becomes pretty decent. But that's sort of it. And then the limited wish isn't bad, with its like pure like variety that you can get out of it. But I think to a certain extent that I don't know if these two final abilities make up for the earlier ones, in my opinion. So I put this one pretty low. I'd have to debate which one, if it's the lowest or not. But I think it's pretty low on my list. Also, I'm a bit biased because this took the place of what could have been just an elemental warlock, which I don't think they'll ever do now because this is the elemental slot and it has elemental related abilities. which is a bit annoying in my opinion. The Great Old One. This is another one of the Player's Handbook ones, which generally have been on the weaker side, but let's have a look. In terms of spell list, you get access to Dissonant Whispers, which is a pretty decent ability, pretty decent spell. It's not bad. Psychic damage. Allows it, makes them move away if they fail a save as well. Hideous Laughter is very useful. Making somebody prone and incapacitated is a pretty huge thing, because it's effectively making them lose a turn. Detect Thoughts is pretty decent out of combat, because it can be used for interrogations or just to get information out of people without, blooming interrogating them. Phantasmal Force, again, I just don't really know how to evaluate it. There's a large wall of text that appears. Obviously, I know you guys can't see it, all of it, but there's a long line of, there's a large paragraph of text that appears, and I mean, I'll be honest, I get overwhelmed and just decide not to read it. It might be good. Clairvoyance isn't bad. I've seen some uses out of that be interesting. Sending's really good. I like the idea of long-term communication. It can be pretty decent, especially if your campaign is doing a lot of long journeys and you want to keep in contact with some NPCs that you'd met in previous areas. Dominate Beast, it comes up occasionally. It's a bit limited. We saw the Black Tentacles. I think they're not bad. They're not the best AoE, but they're not bad. The idea that you can keep somebody like pretty significantly caught in these tentacles for a decent amount of time is not bad. Dominate Person. Dominate Person's pretty decent, as I brought up, and Telekinesis, it has its uses both in and out of combat. Awakened Mind. Starting at first level, your alien knowledge gives you the ability to touch the minds of other creatures. You can telepathically speak to any creature you can see within 30 feet of you. You don't need to share a language with the creature for it to understand your telepathic utterances. Pardon me. But the creature must be able to understand at least one language. Sorry, I needed to cough even more then. I like this ability because I've talked about abilities similar to this that allow you to speak in specific ways, and I've talked about already with the Fathomless about the advantages of it and the disadvantages specifically with our group. But with this one, what I think is quite notable with it is it has a feature other than the just basic speaking thing, in the sense that you can use this to communicate with people that the language you don't have, right? Which can be very, very useful because it allows you to talk to, say, species that maybe have a language that none of you could have learned, right? Like it's a species that never talked to anyone else before. Like a tribe in the middle of nowhere that speaks a language that nobody else knows because they've learned it for themselves. You can do it, which can be very, very useful. So I quite like this ability. I quite like the spell list as well. I think it's pretty good split of damaging spells and out of combat spells, utility spells. I think it's pretty decent. Because I've said it so much, I won't say it, but you know what I'm going to say about the older classes. At 6th level, you gain the feature Entropic Ward. I'm not really sure what entropic means. I'm assuming it's got something related to entropy. That could be wrong. At 6th level, you learn to magically ward yourself against attacks. and to turn an enemy's failed strike into good luck for yourself. When a creature makes an attack roll against you, you can use your reaction to impose disadvantage on that roll. If the attack misses you, your next attack roll against that creature has advantage. If you make it before the end of your next turn, once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. Now, I think this is one of the abilities that really did need the equal to your proficiency bonus thing, because I very much feel like this ability is not very good when it's the one-time effect. Sure, it gives disadvantage on one of the attacks and gives you advantage in another. But I just feel like you'd want more of these. This is my gut reaction. I could be completely wrong here, but you want more of these. I think what's very important when I'm looking at these is I don't have the sort of experience, and therefore I don't have the expertise to do an accurate estimate of this, because I don't have the ability to rate short rest abilities as much as, say, other people who've had experience would be able to. Because maybe this ability comes up enough if you're doing regular short rests. But my gut feeling is that it's cool. It's a really cool ability. The idea that you give them disadvantage and then you use that power to give yourself advantage for your attack back. But yeah, in my gut reaction is this needed to be equal to your proficiency bonus, and maybe you get it back on a long rest, but the ability to use it more than once in a combat would have been pretty cool. Especially when you look at features like the Cleric of Light that would have been around at the same time as this, has a reaction disadvantage, which has restrictions on it, but you're getting that third level. You're getting like 3 levels before this ability, and it's equal to your proficiency bonus and the long rest thing. So I don't know. I feel like this could have been equal to proficiency bonus. 10th level. Starting at 10th level, your thoughts can't be read by I can't say that word. Telepathy. Or other means unless you allow it. You also have resistance to psychic damage, and whenever a creature deals psychic damage to you, the creature takes the same amount of damage that you do. That's really cool, because if you're dealing with a heavily psychic damage related enemy, then you could be doing lots of damage back to them, at least initially, before they realise they have to do something different. I think this one, the resistance to psychic damage is cool. The idea that they can't read your thoughts has come up before in games I've played before, so I think that is a quite useful ability. The damage back at the psychic damage back if they do psychic damage to you ability, I sort of go back to the thing I talked about earlier though, with that one, where it's the bias, right? I think even unintentionally there is a bias towards, well, I'm not going to do psychic damage against this guy because he'll just do psychic damage back at me because I know his ability is he's not immune, but he's resistant and he does it back. So I don't know how useful it is, and maybe if you're in a group where that doesn't come up, this will be a very useful ability. I think it still is pretty useful even if you ignore the psychic damage back to them ability. So I think it's a good ability, but I think in my group, this would come up. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to rag on the DMs or the players, because I'm talking about myself as well when it's coming to these. I think if I was DMing, if I was a player and I was fighting another player for some reason, I think I would do a very similar thing to this, even if I didn't know its abilities. I've seen it before and I know it's a problem. At least in our group. But I've seen it before in other games as well. Crate Thrall. At 14th level, you gain the ability to affect humanoid minds with the alien magic of your patron. You can use your action to touch an incapacitated humanoid. That creature is then charmed by you until A remove curse spell is cast on it. The charmed condition is removed from it, or you use this feature again. You can communicate with a charmed creature as long as the two of you are on the same plane of existence. So this is a charm ability that has infinite duration, and you communicate telepathy. You can communicate with telepathy with it. I think, if I'm being completely honest, that I have a very similar opinion to the Archfey ability capstone feature. That I know this has other abilities to it. It has infinite duration. You can use telepathy through them. But I don't think this is what they think it is. Because it create thrall to me meant like create something that does your bidding. Create minion, right? Charmed doesn't mean completely brainwashed and controlled. As from what I can gather, Charmed only makes it so they think of you as like a good friend. So it's not at all, in my opinion, like what the name suggests. In addition, I think this ability in reality is just, it's better than just a single target charm. Like, it has abilities to it. You can just make effectively a permanent friend. But the fact that you can get rid of it, you can like, it can disappear. Like the remove curse, that's cool. It's a permanent charm effect. I just don't think it has that impact. As you can probably see with how I'm talking, I'm a bit of a struggle evaluating it, but when I'm having a struggle evaluating something, I go with my gut feeling, and my gut feeling is that isn't good enough for a capstone feature. It's not wowing me, and it's not wowing me, and I don't think it's impactful enough. In general, when we're looking at the older like subclasses, which is the Great Old One, the Fiend, and the Archfey, I think Fiend is top. I think maybe I think this mod might be the worst, and that might just be me, but I think it might be the worst. I think Archfey. No, this is better than Archfey. I think it gets a bit more out of combat stuff than Archfey did. I thought about it, and I changed my mind. The Hexblade. Now this one isn't as obvious as the others, so I'll just go through with it. Originally, it's a Shadowfell a sentient magic weapon that was made by the Raven Queen, which is like a shadowy god that's not necessarily evil. From what I can gather, it's kind of like a neutral, like a kind of like chaotic good, maybe. In reality, what this is used for is just, if you want a sentient weapon, you probably go Hexblade. I think a lot of the time. Its spell list it makes sense because it very much fits with the general premise of the Hexblade, which, if you don't know already, it's going Pact of the Blade. It's the most Pact of the Blade of the subclasses. You get access to a lot of spells that paladins get, so some smites, shield, blur's really useful. Elemental weapons, not bad to have a little bit more damage. Cone of Cold isn't bad as well. Like an AoE, you need a couple of AoEs because they're useful. And saving throw ones don't care about you being in melee. Right, first of its first level abilities that is in the spell list. Hexblade's Curse. Starting at first level, you gain the ability to place a baneful curse on someone. As a bonus action, you choose a creature you can see within 30 feet of you. The target is cursed for 1 minute. The curse ends early if the target dies, you die, or you are incapacitated. Until the curse ends, you gain the following benefits. You gain bonus to damage rolls against the cursed target. The bonus is equal to your proficiency bonus. Any attack rolls you make against the cursed target is a crit on 19 or 20. If the cursed target dies, you regain hit points equal to your Warlock level, plus your Charisma bonus. So your Charisma modifier. You can't use this feature again until you finish a short or long rest. I'm sure you're probably seeing some similarities between this and Hunter's Mark, because I feel like very much that when they were making Hexblade, they were taking bits from Paladin and bits from Ranger and giving it to Warlock. I really like this ability. It's effectively, it reminds me a bit of the Monster Hunter Ranger, actually, because it's very much I choose a target, that's the target, I'm going to put all my strength into that one target. The extra damage is always good. A little bit of extra damage, not bad. Probably equivalent of like an extra D4, but it scales, which is decent. Because the D4 you're probably getting around two damage, and this one does around 2. The extra crit stuff, it'll come up occasionally, and it'll be really cool. The healing, that's pretty significant. That because you could be pretty low, and then that gets you, and you're up again. It's a real shame it doesn't stay on them when you're incapacitated, because if it did, it'd be a really cool theme. If it would be very thematic if you could like be doing death saves or stabilized, and then that comes in and it goes heals you up, and you either get up or you're like, oh, you're safe now. Hex Warrior. At first level, you acquire the training necessary to effectively arm yourself for battle. You gain proficiency in medium armor, shield, and martial weapon. The influence of your patron allows you to mystically channel your will through a particular weapon. When you finish a long rest, you can touch one weapon that you're proficient with and that lacks the two-handed property. When you attack with that weapon, you can use your charisma modifier instead of strength or dex for the attack and damage rolls. The benefit lasts until you finish a long rest. If you later gain the Pact of the Blade feature, the benefit extends to every pact weapon you conjure with that feature, no matter the weapon's type. So as you can see, it's very much made for Pact of the Blade, as I mentioned before, and this is why everyone takes Pact of the Blade with it. It's not just it extends to your pact weapon, but also the access to both proficiency in medium armor, shields, and martial weapons, which effectively goes get into melee combat. I like both of these abilities. The curse is really interesting, and it's a cool single target kill spell, like kill ability. And Hex Warrior is also really cool. The spell list is also very good for what you want to be going with. Accursed Spectre. Starting at 6th level, you can curse the soul of a person you slay, temporarily binding it to your service. When you slay a humanoid, you can cause its spirit to rise from its corpse as a spectre. Now, notably, a spectre is a pretty okay thing. It's got 22 health. It's a CR1 creature. When the spectre appears, it gains temp hit points equal to half your Warlock level. So is that I think that's in addition to the health it has. So it's 22 plus half your Warlock level. Roll initiative for the Spectre, which has its own turns. It obeys your verbal commands, and it gains a special bonus to its attack rolls equal to your charisma modifier. The Spectre remains in your service until the end of your next long rest, at which point it vanishes into the afterlife. Once you bind a Spectre with this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. Now, what's interesting about this is early on, this ability is pretty decent. Because early on, you've got an empowered Spectre, which is a CR1 creature. It's not insignificant when you're level 6. That can go into battle, and it can do damage, and it can tank for you. It's got sunlight sensitivity, which isn't the best. But at the end of the day, you just want it to be there and taking hits for either you or your allies, right? And the life drain thing, it can reduce their hit point maximum. That's pretty notable. Like, that could come up and make it so they can't heal as much. in a long fight. I think later on it sort of falls off though, in my opinion. And that's mainly just because when I think about it, like even with the extra health and bonuses to attack, when you're level 10, a Spectre with 5 extra health and a +3 to its attack, it's still not doing anything, in my opinion. It's probably not hitting that often, and when it gets hit, it's probably dead in one round. 10th level, Armor of Hexes. At 10th level, your hexes grow more powerful. If the target is cursed by a Hexblade curse, if a target cursed by a Hexblade curse hits you with an attack roll, you can use your reaction to roll a d6. On a 4 or higher, the attack instead misses you regardless of its roll. That's huge. Like a reaction, like I've seen reactions that have been like lower the damage by a d8, or reactions that give you resistances, so it's like half the damage. And this one goes, nah, screw all of that. This goes reaction, the attack might not even hit. I think that's pretty cool, especially as a 10th level ability. I've got no complaints about that. I think that could be very impactful in a situation where it's like an enemy that has a very, very strong attack, or an attack that has an effect that you're scared of. Maybe it grapples you, maybe it puts a debuff on you, maybe it diseases you or poisons you, and you go, I don't want this to hit, and then it hits, and you're like, fuck. Okay, reaction, maybe I can make it so it doesn't hit. I've got a 50-50 shot. I really like that. 14th level ability, Master of Hexes. You can spread your Hexblade curse from a slain creature to another creature. When the creature cursed by you, by your Hexblade curse, dies, you can apply the curse to a different creature you can see within 30 feet of you, provided you aren't incapacitated. When you apply the curse to them in this way, you don't regain hit points from the death of the previously cursed creature. So this one is effectively turning it into a better hunter's mark at 14th level. I think that's a cool ability, and I think it has a bit more of an impact. Well, maybe not impact's the wrong word, because it's not a single like boom, something's happened. It's more like it's having more of an constant effect than I think some of the others that I was a bit disappointed with had. The ability to transfer it around will mean that you are, you're doing it. You'll feel like you're doing something using it. I don't think it's the best though. I don't put it up with the good capstone features, but I don't put it down with the bad ones. In conclusion, or in summary of this one, or I shouldn't say in summary because I normally use in summary for the freaking summary. In general, the Hexblade Warlock, I like the spell list, I like the curse, I like the Hex Warrior thing, very much pushing the Pact of the Blade. The Spectre, I think, falls off very quickly, and I think the Armor of Hexes is a cool, very, very cool ability. I think this one's the stinker, and then this one's just not fun. Like the 14th level ability is just, I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's good. I think it's neutral. I put this one above above Fiend, above Fathomless, above Archfey, but below all the others, in my opinion. No, it's above Genie. Never mind. It's above Genie. I don't think it's good as Fathomless and Celestial. Next one is the Undead. Now, notably, and you will see this, there's one called Undead, there's one called Undying. Now, one of them, I think it's the Undying, is just an upgraded version of Undead. But I'm going to go through both of them. This one's self-explanatory, what your patron is, but so I won't go into it. Your spell lists. You get Bane. Bane's really useful. It's as useful as Bless in the sense that you'll see where it'll be like, hold on a second, I roll a d4. Oh, it misses. And that's huge, because especially later on, the idea that like an attack misses is, it could mean that you survive another turn. False Life is okay. I think you get False Life as a possible Eldritch Invocation that you can cast as will, which really takes down this being in the spell list a bit. Blindness Deafness is again okay. Phantasmal Force, I'm too lazy to read. Phantom Steed is cool. Maybe it has a bit of utility. Speak with Dead has a lot of utility. Let me have a look at Death Ward again. Death Ward's okay if you want to put it on somebody who's really squishy. Greater Invisibility will be quite useful in my opinion. Anti-Life Shell. It's a cool ability. It means they can't get close to you, which isn't bad. And Cloud Kill would be really good if it wasn't poison damage. So overall, spell list is not bad. Not incredible, but not bad. Form of Dread. You manifest an aspect of your patron's dreadful power. As a bonus action, you transform for 1 minute. You gain the following benefits while transformed. You gain temporary hit points equal to 1d10 plus your Warlock level. Once during each of your turns, when you hit a creature with an attack roll, you can force it to make a wisdom save. And if the saving throw fails, the target is frightened. So once on your turns, you can frighten them. That's not bad. You're immune to the frightened condition. You can transform a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. The appearance of your form of dread reflects some aspects of your patron. For example, shadows, robes of like a lich, body might glow, that kind of stuff. I like forms, I like transformations, and this one is really cool. Extra D10 plus Warlock level. Do I think that's going to matter later on? No, but earlier on it won't be bad, and later on at least it will do something. It just won't have the impact that it will have earlier on, in my opinion. The once per turn frighten extra thing, because it's a constant, I quite like it because it means specifically that you can keep repeating it. So even if they're very unlikely to be frightened, which you will probably always have them having a decently high saving throw, you're constantly doing it, so you maybe eventually get through. It is notable that a lot of stuff does get immune to frightened, but because you can do this so many times, there's a chance you can maybe get it on some of the other minions. Possibly, so I don't mind that as much, and being immune to frightened is just an extra little icing on the cake. I like it. It doesn't do a lot, but all the other forms I've seen have been much later level, and so you expect them to do a lot. This one I think is cool because of the extra health and the frightened thing. I do think that both of those abilities are very notably do not scale very well, and I think that is a bit of a problem with it. But overall, it's not bad. I think I do worry about what happens later on, though. Grave Touched. 6th level. Your patron's power has profound effect on your body and magic. You don't need to eat. You don't need to drink. You don't need to breathe. That's a really cool narrative tool. I quite like that. In addition, once during each of your turns, when you hit a creature with an attack roll and roll damage against that creature, you can replace the damage type with Necrotic. Necrotic's pretty good. Not a lot of things have resistance to Necrotic. When you're using your Form of Dread, you can roll an additional damage die when determining the necrotic damage you take. I think this is really good because it sort of solves one of the problems that I have with the Form of Dread that I mentioned before, where it doesn't scale well, because this just adds another ability to the Form of Dread, and this one will always have an impact, right? Yeah, I quite like this ability. It does a lot more than you expect from a 6th level. I think, as I said before, the not eating, not drinking, not breathing thing may seem like a small thing, but it will have a lot of narrative effects, and it will sort of like maybe give this impression that like, oh god, this person, there's something not quite right with this person. Like I haven't seen them eat. I don't know the last time I saw them breathe. Like that kind of really unsettling effect on the like the narrative for that person. And the extra damage die, it will mean like you feel like you're doing something. It's not huge, but I don't think it's horrendous. I will say both of these abilities, they haven't wowed me. I just think generally they've been good. Necrotic Husk. Your connection to undeath and necrotic energy now saturates your body. You have resistance to necrotic damage. That's pretty decent. If you are transformed, you instead become immune to necrotic damage. Now that will be very, very interesting. I will say, I said this for all the others, I'll say it for this. There is that bias there, right? And that is notable, and should like. I won't do the spiel again because I've done it 2 times already, but just have that in your head when you're thinking about this ability. In addition, when you would be reduced to 0 hit points, you can use your reaction to drop to 1 hit point instead, and cause your body to erupt with deathly energy. Each creature of your choice that is within 30 feet of you takes necrotic damage 2d10, plus your Warlock level. You then gain 1 level of exhaustion. Once you use this reaction, you can't do it again until you finish 1d4 long rests. So this is more powerful, earlier level, but bigger restrictions, like bigger after effects on it than the Celestial ability. The Celestial one where you came back. It doesn't blind them, and you get an extra bit of exhaustion, and you only get it back after 1d4 long rests, but it does a decent more damage, because I think it was 2d8 and this is 2d10, and I don't think it added anything to it, and this adds your... I think it might have added your charisma bonus, but this adds your Warlock level. So that effectively does 2d10 plus 10 at when you get the ability, which is a lot more damage. And yeah, the first level of exhaustion, it has disadvantages of an ability check, so that's not bad. I really like this ability. I've got really no complaints about it. You get this resistance to a damage type that will occasionally come up. The immunity to it is really cool. And then there's just big, like, I'm back impact. I always talk about impact, but that one's a proper impact ability. Starting up, 14th level ability, Spirit Protection. Your spirit can become untethered from your physical form. As an action, you can reject your spirit from your body. The body you leave behind is unconscious and in a state of suspended animation. Your spirit resembles your mortal form in almost every way, replicating your game statistics, but not your possessions. Any damage or other effects that apply to your spirit or physical body affect the other. Your spirit can remain outside your body for up to 1 hour, or until your concentration is broken, as if concentrating on a spell. When the projection ends, your spirit returns to your body, or your body magically teleports to your spirit's space, your choice. While projecting your spirit, you gain the following benefits. Resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. When you cast a spell of the Conjuration or Necromancer school, they don't require verbal somatic components or material. You have a flying speed equal to your walking speed and can hover. You can move through creatures and objects as if they were difficult terrain, but you take 1d10 force damage if you end your turn there. While you're using Form of Dread, once during each of your turns when you deal necrotic damage to a creature, you will gain hit points equal to half the amount of the necrotic damage dealt. This is really cool, because it's kind of like it's a second transformation that also uses the previous transformation. This is a proper impactful thing, because it's powerful, but also you're leaving your body there, which they can just hit and knock you out of the concentration. But it's a constant like heal. You get resistance to necrotic, piercing, and slashing. You know, the extra like thing where you can conjure stuff without having any of the components or without even talking. The flying speed's very useful. Even little things in the description text. The idea that you can teleport to your spirit when it ends it, so it's also a teleportation ability, is huge. The fact you have it for an hour, so you can use it as like a scouting tool if you need to. It's got a lot of utility. I'm putting Undead pretty high up in my evaluations. In fact, I might put it as one of the best. I think, personal opinion, I probably put Fathomless higher than it, but it's a close second. I have no real complaints about it. It gets access to a cool transformation that is powerful for the level you get it at, and then every other ability that you get adds on to that and makes it like more and more relevant. When the first level ability is becoming more and more irrelevant, you're getting more and more abilities that are relevant, and that's huge. I really like that. Yeah, I think that's a real good one. Undying. Now, again, this one's effectively, it's very similar. In fact, I think they even use a similar example. Yeah, the Lich Queen Githyanki can be used for both of them. And I think specifically this one is one where death doesn't affect them. So I guess it can also be more evil gods and stuff. Your spell list, it's interesting. I think it's a bit more, it's different, but there's a lot of similarities, right? Again, as I said before, False Life, you can get it at will as a Warlock, which really lessens this effect. Ray of Sickness is not bad, but the problem with Ray of Sickness is its poison damage. Blindness and Deafness is alright. Silence, again, as I said before, is a bit finicky. Feign Death is not bad. It's got some uses. It occasionally comes up. I have never actually used it before, but I can see it having some really interesting narrative things, sort of in combat, but not actually but also doing narrative stuff in the combat. Speak with Dead is really useful. Aura of Life gives you resistance to necrotic, and your hit point maximum can't be reduced. It's really useful actually. That final line where if they start the turn with 0 health, they gain 1 health. It just can keep people in combat, which is very useful. So having that on a Warlock as well that doesn't normally get access to proper healing is not insignificant. Death Ward, as I brought up before, is pretty useful just to keep somebody a bit squishy in the combat. Contagion's interesting because it gives you a load of spells that are not related to the poison. The diseases, sorry, it gives a lot of diseases that aren't related to poison. I think because it requires you to be poisoned, I think it's not as good. If it didn't require that and just put diseases on you, I think it would be decent. Legendary Lore maybe has some narrative use. I'll be honest, I've never used this, so I can't really comment on it. Among the Dead, first level ability. You learn the Spare the Dying cantrip, which counts as a Warlock cantrip. You also have advantage on saving throws against any disease. Additionally, Undead have difficulty harming you. If an Undead targets you directly with an attack or harmful spell, that creature must succeed on a Wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC. On a failed save, the creature must choose a new target or forfeit targeting someone instead of you. But they must choose a new target or forfeit targeting someone instead of you, potentially washing the attack or spell. Wasting. So I don't know why I saw washing. On a successful save, the creature is immune to the effect for 24 hours. An Undead is also immune to the effect for 24 hours if you target it with an attack or a harmful spell. Okay, I think this ability has too many restrictions to it. I think it could have easily just have said, they target you with a spell, they got to make a wisdom save. If they fail the save, they can't attack you. Use this equal to your proficiency bonus. This can happen equal to your proficiency bonus. Maybe we'd have to put a line where say you can choose to make it do this. But I think, or have it where it says it only works once against every person. After this effect happens, they're immune to it for 24 hours. I think this idea of like, oh, you can't have attacked it before, oh, it has to be like that, I think is annoying in my opinion. Make it so it works once against every undead and then never again, or they succeed on the save and it's fine. I think these extra bits weren't needed. I like the extra spare the dying thing. It's a bit more narrative. I think if you're getting a cantrip for a feature though, I want it to upgrade the cantrip or change it in some way. That's just me. Defy Death, 6th level ability. Starting at 6th level, you can give yourself vitality when you cheat death or when you help someone else cheat it. You can regain hit points equal to 1d8 plus your constitution modifier when you succeed on a death saving throw or when you stabilize a creature with Stir the Dying. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. So they sort of do that with the Spare the Dying, except it's a once per long rest. Succeed on a saving throw or stabilize somebody, you regain hit points. Now, that is notable for the saving throw thing. I think it's less notable for Spare the Dying somebody else. If it healed them, and it meant that Spare the Dying didn't stabilize, it just brought them back up, I think it would have a much bigger effect. I don't honestly really like this ability. The death saving throw thing's cool, but the rest of it, I don't really understand the second part of it, really. I don't think it's really useful. I think they were trying to link it back to Spare the Dying, but it hasn't really worked. So it's soured me. I think if you took that away and I looked at the ability, I'd be like, yeah, sure, once per long rest, you succeed on you succeed on a death saving throw and you just get back up. It's like you roll a 20. I'd like that. I just think that bit soured me on it. If I ignore that bit, it's good. It's cool. It's a cool spell. Cool feature. 10th level, Undying Nature. Beginning at 10th level, you can hold your breath indefinitely, and you don't require food, water, or sleep, although you still require rest to reduce exhaustion, and still benefit from finishing a short or long rest. In addition, you age slower. For every 10 years that pass, your body only ages 1 year, and you are immune to being magically aged. That's really cool. I like the narrative of the second part of the ability, the aging slower, because there's that really cool thing where like you do a time skip and like 5 years pass and it's like, oh god, all of you have changed so much, and then you look at the Warlock and he's like, hasn't changed at all, because it's been for him like a couple months in terms of his body aging, which I think is really cool. I've mentioned before how the not eating, sleeping, or drinking really comes up in terms of a narrative tool. I think in general, this ability should have had another effect that actually did something in addition to just these passive effects, but overall it's a decent narrative tool if you can use it right. Just a bit disappointing it doesn't also come with something else. I think Undead came with something else. Indestructible Life. When you reach 14th level, you partake some of the true secrets of the Undying. On your turn, you can use your bonus action to regain hit points equal to 1d8 plus your Warlock level. Additionally, if you put a severed body part of yours back in place when you use this feature, the part reattaches. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. That's incredibly underwhelming. Getting 1d8 plus your Warlock level is pretty decent, right? Because effectively you don't even need that 1d8 there, because at this point, even now, you're getting 14 back minimum. Well, you're getting 15 back minimum. I think a once per short rest heal is, in my opinion, a bad capstone ability. I do not rate this highly at all. Overall, spell list is fine. Among the Dead needs less restrictions on it. Defy Death annoys me in the second ability part of this ability, but generally it's fine. Undying Nature needed an extra ability attached to it, and Indestructible Life is a very disappointing capstone feature. Undead, in my opinion, is much better than Undying in this situation. I do not rate Undying particularly high. In fact, it kind of soured me to the point where I kind of prefer the Fiend over it. I think I put it in between Fiend and Great Old One, which is it's pretty bad for a later subclass. Right, in summary of the subclasses, Archfey, I don't particularly rate that highly. Its capstone feature didn't impress me. Let me do this so that I remember this is where I'm supposed to do the summary. The Archfey bit didn't impress me that much. The AoE Frighten or Charm wasn't bad. But its capstone feature effectively being the same thing annoyed me a bit. It had a couple of good abilities. Celestial was pretty good. The access to all these healings while not giving you access to Cleric spell list was an interesting way of doing stuff. The Fathomless was really cool because you get access to those tentacles and they increasingly do more. I think its capstone feature was a bit disappointing. Oh, notably the Celestial capstone feature was pretty decent. The Fiend was pretty good, especially for it coming out so long ago. Getting access to a once per long rest, I really need to succeed in this role, was really cool. Getting access to that when you kill something, you get a bit of temp health, was always very useful. Overall, pretty decent. Genie was a bit disappointing in my opinion. Its features, the only one that was pretty interesting was the bringing other people into the lamp. All the others were either passive effects or just feel like antisocial effects where you just went in the lamp on your own. The Great Old One had a decent amount of utility. I just feel like the abilities were a bit disappointing, especially the capstone feature that just felt like a slightly stronger charm. It didn't fit with the naming scheme of it being like make thrall. The Hexblade was made for the patch of the blade, and you notice it. All its spell lists, all its abilities, which I quite liked, especially the curse that was very similar to the Monster Hunter's ability, and the idea that you can switch it around, and the temp health you get before you can do that from killing someone who has one on is really, really cool. So I rate that one pretty highly. Undead was really fun. The transformation early on, with abilities that are pretty good at the start, but like they don't scale very well, but every level you get something that scales with it, was pretty cool. I rate that one quite highly. And Undying was a bit of a disappointment, especially its capstone feature. I just didn't rate that highly. Overall, I think for Warlock, similarities between them is bad capstone ability. They all just don't seem very impactful, and a lot of them are just more powerful versions, like slightly more powerful versions of what they can do at the start, except the power scaling is not worth the extra like 13 levels it is between the first level ability and the 14th level ability. Very little of them, in my opinion, even the ones I really liked, fundamentally changed how you played. Now that might be because it was a bit more of a half caster, but the Ranger did it pretty well. I think the only one I could say that did change how you play a significant amount would be Celestial. which was a bit disappointing. I think most of the classes either lacked utility or lacked combat abilities, and I think that was pretty interesting to know. In general, though, I'd probably be playing Warlock a lot because Warlock's just a cool conceptual base class. I do think that the subclasses need more to them, especially with how close you're supposed to be with the patron that you've made a deal with. This one should be the most customizable one out of all the classes, and it very much feels like it doesn't get many unique things with it. But don't let me put you off playing a Warlock. Warlocks are the best sort of narrative experience for me, in my opinion. But hey, it's just been me rambling. I could be completely wrong. Please don't take them as professional opinions. Right, so I guess I'll wrap this up. Next week we'll be doing the final of the classes. We'll be doing Wizard, and I'll have to come up with something that I want to play after the fact. I might play some Diablo 3 because I have been having some decent amount of fun with Diablo 3, and I feel like I could play that, and I could play that in the smaller screen that I have to do because I don't have the streaming I don't have the download to do a full screen stream. So I feel like I could crop it, maybe take out some part of it to make it fit. I'll have to look to see if I can, and I could definitely play that while talking, and I think I'd be interested enough about the lore that I feel like I could talk about it for a bit. I'll have to see because I haven't done any streaming where I've been playing a game in addition. So I might do that, but we'll see. I'll probably have more information about it next week when we're actually streaming. So stay tuned for that. Anyway, I've been JD Moss. I hope you've liked this because I've been having a lot of fun doing this and learning about subclasses I've never done. It's a bit kind of sad that it's almost coming to the end, but anyway, I've been JD Moss, as I've said. I hope you've liked this, and see you next week.